Once upon a time, deep in a forest, a poor woodcutter's family lived. The woodcutter and his wife had a son named Hansel, and a daughter named Gretel. The family was so poor that when they ran out of food, the parents decided to abandon their children in the forest. Hansel, who had overheard his parents' conversation, snuck out of the window that night and gathered a lot of pebbles that shone under the moonlight. The next day, as they followed the woodcutter into the mountains, Hansel secretly dropped the shiny pebbles one by one to mark their way back. That evening, he and his sister Gretel safely returned home. The parents were surprised to see Hansel and Gretel back but pretended to be worried and welcomed them. The next day, the mother blocked the children from going outside at night, knowing that Hansel had collected pebbles the day before. So, the following day when they followed their father into the mountains, Hansel dropped pieces of bread, which were given for breakfast, to mark their way. However, the birds ate all the breadcrumbs, and there were none left when Hansel and Gretel tried to find their way back home. While wandering in the forest, Hansel and Gretel discovered a house made of candy, cookies, and cake. Being hungry from wandering in the forest, they started eating the candy house. At that time, an old woman came out and took them inside, serving them food. In fact, the old woman was a witch who used the candy house to lure and eat people who lost their way. Initially, she provided Hansel and Gretel with bread, soup, and a place to sleep. But a few days later, she locked Hansel in a cage and made Gretel do housework. The witch planned to fatten Hansel and eat him, so she kept feeding him. However, the witch had poor eyesight and couldn't confirm whether Hansel had gained weight or not. So she would ask him to reach out his hand and checked his weight by the thickness of his finger. Hansel took advantage of the witch's poor eyesight and tricked her into thinking he was still thin, by offering her a bone left from his meal when she asked him to reach out his hand. The witch decided to eat Gretel first rather than wait for Hansel to gain weight, and asked Gretel to check the fire in the oven. Gretel, who sensed the witch's intention to eat her, lied that the fire in the oven was not burning well and asked the witch for help. When the witch leaned into the oven to check the fire, Gretel pushed her into the oven and locked the door. The witch burned to death in the oven. Gretel found the key to the cage where Hansel was locked and released him. They took the treasure that the witch had hidden and returned home. The parents, seeing Hansel and Gretel return, realized their foolishness and reconciled with their children, welcoming them warmly. And they lived happily ever after.